September 29th, Arizona. It's morning. I'm listening to Vim's Sun Sessions tape while Dean Lent drives. We left Los Angeles in Vim's van yesterday afternoon, and we should arrive in 2 days at Lajitas, Texas, where the rest of the crew is already working. The thought of arriving absolutely panics me. We are seldom prepared for the experiences of achieving what we most want. 2 years ago, I began writing urgent fan mail to Vim after first seeing Lightning Over Water. Since then, I've written an average of a letter a week to him. This past May, he called me while in LA and asked if I could find time to show him my film. This was unprecedented at UCLA that an artist of Vim's stature would come to see a student's first film. I wore a new dress and was a nervous wreck for days. Now I'm going to work and learn from him. And of all the challenges I've had to endure, this one now seems the toughest challenge of all, because I've never wanted anything this much, and nothing has ever frightened me more. People would say, what do you write to him about? I would write him on an average of a week. And it was basically like sending him journals. I would write to him about anything that was going on. And they were like, well, what do you want to get out of this? And I really didn't know. I just wanted to have some kind of contact, I guess. He was kind of a muse for me, but he was a mentor and a muse at the same time. When I was in film school, he called me, he actually read my script, believe it or not, for my very first movie at UCLA, and gave me feedback on it. It was like a Super 8 movie with 16 millimeter sound, and I've got this, already a legendary director giving me feedback. By the way, by this time too, I had already seen all of his work. My favorite being Alice in the Cities at that point. And so he told me that he was working on a script with Sam Shepard. He gave me feedback on my script. He told me I should not try to do these dissolves I had written into my script in the camera. He thought that was way too risky. But I thought, it's Super 8, it's not that expensive, exactly, If it's a mistake, big deal. So I made my film. He called me up one day and he says, he was actually at Sam Shepard's house in San Francisco, and he said, Allison, it's Vim, I'm coming to Los Angeles, I wonder if you could find time to show me your film. So I was pretty shocked, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, So he said, get together a couple other people whose work you want me to see, because I've been telling him about my buddies, in film school, Dean and Kurt and Scott Kirby. It was so funny because at Melnitz's Hall, he had to walk down these steps to come to the film school, and I'm standing there like, it was just so idolatrous, because he's walking down these steps in these blue jeans and looking all cool. So we took him to this room, showed him our movies. He looked at my dissolves and he said, very risky, like how I did them. And he said, but very beautiful, and he saw all of our films, and he said, he really liked my film. And then I said, well, I wanted to show you this too. I won a grant. And he said, oh, congratulations. And I said, yeah, it's to study under you on Paris, Texas. And he just got this very far away look in his eye. And he says, well, I guess you'll have to come. And I said, oh, and two of these guys, they also won the same grant. So he ended up taking all three. Me and Scott Kirby and Dean Lent all went on to Paris, Texas as production assistants. I didn't know how that experience was going to be important to me. I really took a big risk because he was my hero, he was my mentor, he was my muse, it was like I could really, I could really lose my whole idea about film by doing something real like this. But for me, it was definitely worth it. I thought, I'm going to learn stuff that I can't use for years. And that's definitely what happened. October 2nd, Lajitas, Texas. We arrived last night at about 6 o'clock p.m. The crew was still on location. Patrick, Dean, and I walked down to the river. There's a road, but it's so rugged I'm surprised cars can drive it. It's so dark you can barely see in front of you. Bats circle the few street lights, and the sky's crowded with stars. Lajitas is a resort. The few homes here belong to well-to-do Texans. On the other side of the Rio Grande is Mexico, the other extreme. As we walked, we could see the faint flickering of a small bonfire across the river. We heard a group of Mexicans talking loudly. We couldn't see them. We assumed that they were across the river in the huts. But as we walked on, we realized we were getting closer to the voices. We could hear the squeaking of a wooden boat and the water treading. As we came to the end of the road, we could barely make out the silhouettes of a group of people on the other side of the river. 3 men got out of the boat on our side of the shore. One man stood in front of an old car with no license plate, which was partially hidden by the bushes. He helped the men out of their boat. One had an old suitcase and a straw hat. He seemed about 40. The other 2 were younger. They got into the car, but when they drove past, only the driver was visible. "Hey," he said. "Hi." And we said hi back. All of us stared at each other. We had just seen people coming to America. When we went back to the Badlands Hotel, a country and western duo sang old hillbilly ballads in the bar. Some were songs my mother used to sing to me, and I felt some comfort in that. When the crew arrived, I was nervous all over again. Wim sat with us for a while, and he was very nice, but I still felt uncomfortable, like the new kid in school, and in a way, I guess I am. The most important thing that Wim gave me, a responsibility, was he had me run lines with Harry Dean Stanton. Now, I had never worked with real actors before. My actors in my one movie I had already made at this point were student actors. And so I didn't know what information you give actors, what you don't give actors, what a director's process is. I had no idea how any of this worked. But Harry was in his trailer, and I would run lines with him. And one day, Dean Stockwell was in there. I ran lines with both of them. And Harry was really frustrated that he didn't know what was going on in Travis's head. So he said, "God damn it, I don't know what's supposed to be happening to this guy. Is he mute? Is he dumb? Is he catatonic?" And so I burst out very innocently. I said, "Excuse me, I was catatonic when I was 15, and they're both looking at me, and I'm like, I wrote a poem about it." And so they're both really quiet, and Dean Stockwell goes, "Honey, do you have that poem with you here?" And for some stupid reason, I did. I brought it with me. I don't know why. It was in like a little journal or something. And I said, "I do, actually." So they sent one of my buddies back to the hotel, got the poem out of my room, and then they basically started grilling me for a while, and Harry said, "Well, when you weren't talking, what was going through your head? Could you hear other people? Did you just not hear anybody? Or, what?" So I told them all of my experience, and then most importantly, Harry said, the most important question that he asked was, when you talked again, was your voice shaky? Was it hard to talk? I said, "No, I just kind of started talking. It was just time. I've been not talking for about a month, and it just came out." I said, and everybody was shocked. It never occurred, that was the first time I learned, oh my God, my personal experience. An actor can take something that I've been through and actually use that in creating a character. As a director, there may be stuff that you don't necessarily want an actor to know, or maybe you like to leave them in a kind of state of having to figure it out themselves. Or, you know, I mean, every director works differently, so I never knew if Vim really appreciated me stepping in there or not. But it just happened so organically, and it was just such a funny experience that it happened like that. October 11th, El Paso, Texas. I'm sitting here by the pool of the Ramada Inn. I'm watching our drivers in the parking lot. It's late. They shut down production today at 3 p.m. on strike. I don't understand much of this. I don't have an opinion, but it irritates me how much they flaunt the fact that they are only the ones who feel like partying. Earlier tonight, I walked past Patrick's room. He was smoking cigarettes on his bed and watching a baseball game on TV. Half the crew went to buy boots. Dean addressed postcards. Robert played guitar on his bed. Harry Dean Stockwell talked over coffee in the pancake cottage. Kim called her husband long distance. He's going crazy without her. Scott went for a walk. But here in the parking lot, the Teamsters play poker on the hoods of the film vehicles with their Willie Nelson cranked up on the ghetto blaster. The movie was shut down at some point by the Teamsters in Texas. And my God, we were in El Paso, and I will never forget, Vim's a very tall guy, but I will never forget watching these gigantic Teamsters arrive to have a meeting with Vim and the producers. And it was really intense, but, you know, worked out. You know, he held his own, and we got back up running again. And it is really intense, though, when you get shut down. I've been shut down before, and you never quite make that time up. I mean, it's never quite, you lose something by the time that you're shut down. October 12th, work resumes. Late today, everyone's in a much better mood. We all waited in the parking lot ready to drive to the locations as the issue with the Teamsters was being resolved. These union bosses, so severe, looked about 7 feet tall, dark shades, snakeskin boots, coolly shaking hands with Vim, who was wearing blue jeans, gray suspenders, tennis shoes, and a t-shirt which read, "Art is a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it." October 15th, California. We're on our way home. It's been a tedious day. We got up at 3:30 a.m. to shoot a dawn scene in the desert. It's going to look beautiful, but I don't think anyone was all too convinced it was worth it at the time. As the crew pulled up to the location, Balaz, the makeup man, said, "Where are we?" To which Helen replied, pissed off and stomping on the bus, "Where do you think? Out in the middle of nowhere, as usual." We were all very tired. I love the scene. Dean Stockwell and Harry leaning against an old abandoned truck as Harry delivered a monologue from Sam Shepard's Motel Chronicles. I only noticed myself smiling at them when Claire walked over and put her arm around me and said, "It's great, huh?" I put my arm around her and nodded, "Yes, it's great." Later in the Mojave, it was very hot, but Vim insisted on waiting for trains. Robbie walked around in the desert looking at rocks and plants. He had wanted to be a biologist when he fell in with the artist crowd in college and became one of the world's best cinematographers instead. In 2 hours, I'll be home. Claire and Agnes ended up forming this fabulous relationship, working together as director and cinematographer that Vim had with Robbie up till that point. You know, I mean, Robbie, it was incredible to work with, it was amazing being there with Robbie and seeing how he just set up the day's work. It was beautiful. But Claire, I can't even say enough. She really kept things together for that crew. She was just there. She was such a great first AD. You know, it was amazing the experiences she had been through. I'll never forget her telling me that when she was a teenager, I mean, I wish I had been there to see it, of her getting married when she was really young, all in black, and her mother crying because she was wearing black to her wedding. I was just like, just imagining this beautiful young French girl, like all gothed out for her wedding. Her mother was like, "You are crazy," just like weeping at her wedding. I don't know what happened to that husband, but it's interesting, just for that image of this young girl at that time getting married like that. November 23rd, Port Arthur, Texas. Agnes told me a great dream she had about the production. She said she dreamed we arrived in a town which was all in black and white, a town without color. Robbie was very upset because we had already shot at least half of the film in color. She said Robbie was very disappointed and said, "I'm sorry, I cannot stay here. There is no color to finish our film, and there will be no red wine." December 3rd, Houston. I spent the afternoon with Nastasia. She wasn't feeling well. I was concerned because Claire said she had fainted this morning. Nastasia said almost. Still, it's dangerous for a pregnant woman. Maybe she's just tired. She was dressed in a sweatshirt, a nondescript shirt, her hair in a ponytail and no makeup, and of course was completely beautiful. She's so incredibly sweet. She was friendly and courteous to everyone, but one thing I've sensed about her is that she's mistrusting of people getting too friendly too fast. She doesn't like for people to fawn over her all the time, and it makes her a little uneasy to be told she's great looking. You really have to earn her trust and let her decide the moves. And I think as a person, she's definitely worth it. She's simply endearing. We shared a lovely time. I used to be a childbirth teacher, and we talked about a book she was reading by Le Boyer, which she explained focused on the physical and spiritual conditions necessary for a healthy pregnancy and birth. We talked about all that was being formed of her baby right now in her second month. I said, the heart forms first, before anything. She sat and stared at me, wide-eyed and reverent. "Oh God, it's incredible," she said. It was a really good, close moment, which I needed as much as anyone. It felt good to be really able to give something of myself, of my life, which she could be able to use in hers. I remember Agnes and I talking, actually, about women in Wim Wenders' movies, because it was interesting to kind of see, like, try and get a handle on what Nastasia's character was exactly, and where women are in Wim Wenders' movies. I mean, if you take a straight sort of feminist line, you can't really find it, because the women are very naturalistic. So to me, they were women I could really relate to. I mean, Lisa Kreutzer often played a single mom in her, that, I totally understood that mother. I didn't understand leaving your child with a stranger, but I'm glad she did in this case in Alice in the Cities, because I liked seeing what happened as a result. Now we've got that again with in Paris, Texas. We've got a mother leaving her child, a single mom, because by this time she had left Travis. And I was already a young mother at this point, a single mom, and I related to these single mothers. I didn't relate to them abandoning their kids, even if they abandoned them in a benevolent way, which they did. He kind of gives them that. But it left for it. What it does is I mean, you would never see this in an American movie. It can't happen, because people would have too many ideas about it. I mean, look at what happened with Kramer versus Kramer. That was a big deal, and that was a Hollywood movie, but it was like, oh, it's a big deal. She left her child with his father. In both of these cases, the child is not even left with their father. They're left with, in Paris, Texas, left with his brother, Travis's brother, and in Alice in the Cities with a complete stranger, really. But what happens as a result of that is just this very powerful thing about reuniting a child, a child connecting with other people and creating new relationships as a result, and deepening someone's awareness of themselves through the process. And so that was really interesting to me. And Agnes and I talked a lot about that, about where are women in Wim's movies? What is that relationship? And can you take a complete feminist point of view with the women in his films? And you really can't. I mean, his films don't lend themselves to any kind of politicizing like that. You just can't. Whenever I teach my class at UC Santa Barbara on American independence, I actually start with a movie by a German and a movie by an Englishman. So I start with Paris, Texas, and then with Repo Man, because to me they're the beginnings of the American independent film movement. But at that point there was no such thing here, really. Nobody was trying to make movies like that. So he was bringing a European sensibility to make a film in America. I really do feel like it's the first of the American independent film movement, because after that influenced Jarmusch, that influenced us, making movies that way. We also took from his sensibility and how he saw America, translated through the early American filmmakers, translated into a European sensibility, and then we took it and made it American again. So I really feel like it was the beginning of that, and certainly that influenced how we made our films. These journals that I kept, these diaries for Paris, Texas, were actually in 3 different installments, because what we did was the first part of the film started in Texas. We drove back to LA. Then we shot in LA. Then we drove back to Texas, which is, that's how the film works. So when we came back to LA, I gave them an installment of the first diaries. And I thought, he's not going to read these because he's busy working. How's he going to find time to read these? Well, while I didn't read necessarily all of that stuff here for you, there was stuff in the, where I'd say things like, I see how Wim works people on the crew, or whatever. I was kind of very observant, very irreverent, like outing him on certain things. And so, I didn't think he would read it till after the movie was over, and so in LA, I'm in the production office and I'm walking by him, and I said, hello, and he goes, hello. And he goes, oh, you, come here. And he's like, he puts his arm around me, he's telling, I don't know who we're talking to, but he goes, she thinks she knows so much about me, she thinks she's so smart. And he says, just remember, the production always reflects what the film is about. And of course, I was such a smart ass that I just immediately said, oh, I think this film is starting to reflect what your last movie was about, which was the state of things where the movie shut down because, the producer, in that case, the producer had run off with the money, or he couldn't find, the director's like trying to get the film back up and running, and we had just been shut down in Texas. So I'm being a little smart ass to him. But the incredible thing was that I have always learned that he's right. That, in every film that I've made, I did find that the production always reflects what the film is about. And I think that in the end, this one did too. It's really interesting how he put that. And I think about it every time that I go to make a film, and I'm going, oh, why is this part so hard, or why am I faced with these challenges? And I inevitably find that has to do with the material within the film.